Hi, my name is Steve Dymszo. I've been a professional model maker and product designer for about 21 years. I co-founded Master Replicas back in 2001, and I currently own SD Studios and Artifactory. Last spring, Agostini and Model Space approached me about being involved in their studio scale Millennium Falcon project. I was very excited about this opportunity because, frankly, it's one of my favorite ships, and I wanted to be able to bring a really nice replica to the market for all the fans. The purpose of this video and the future videos that we'll be doing is to give you some tips and tricks, pointers, paint codes, all kinds of information on how you can get your model painted as accurately as possible to replicate the original filming miniature used in the series. Agostini and Model Space were pretty concerned that people wouldn't be very clear on that, so they decided to go the extra mile and create this video series to help you make the model as accurate as possible. So let's just take a moment to make a disclaimer. These videos are not meant to be the end-all be-all instructional video. We're going to show you tips and tricks and different things that they did at ILM to make the model for the filming miniature. But at the end of the day, it's your model. Feel free to use your own techniques, systems that you've been using for years that you're happy with, and don't obsess and agonize over every tiny little thing. Just at the end of the day, just have fun with it. I'd like to take a minute just to talk about color, because it is a big sticking point with a lot of people. You know, color is one of those moving targets that you just can't hit, but so many people try. So, as I've said before in the video, just try to have fun and get things as accurately as looks good to you. We will certainly be discussing colors and color reference. When we examine the original filming miniature, we did Pantone it as well as possible. So I do have those paint codes, and we will be sharing some of those paint codes with you. But in general, colors vary with your surroundings, whether you're in sunlight, whether you're in a room with tungsten lights, fluorescent lights. So gray is not really gray. Gray is gray, one gray in sunlight, and it's another gray in a room light. So it's really difficult to try to follow sometimes. Another complication is a lot of people look at photographs on their computer monitors and try to match colors against that. The trick with that is those colors are lit because the computer monitor is using pixels to recreate colors. So you really can't use a computer monitor as an accurate match to anything. So don't try. I guess my point here is don't agonize over them because color changes constantly depending under which conditions you're looking at it. So let's get into some of the details on this model. What is it? It's a 32-inch replica of the original filming miniature from Empire Strikes Back. There were a number of different models used throughout the trilogy, but Model Space and Agostini have decided to do a replica of the 32-inch filming miniature as it was seen in ESB. So it has all of the details seen in that particular film. The prototype that was shown at Celebration is composed of SLA resin. SLA stands for Stereolithographic Apparatus. That was used in 3D printing. It's also referred to as rapid prototyping. It's really good stuff, and it does have a lot of resolution and can reproduce a lot of detail, but it's pretty brittle. You definitely wouldn't want to use it for production models. The kits, as you're receiving them, are actually composed of several different materials. The body shell is made out of ABS plastic. For your chemistry buffs, ABS stands for acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. It's a form of styrene plastic, but it's much stronger than the polystyrene plastic that you normally see in model kits. One of the things that we definitely want to point out to you, though, is that because it's different than polystyrene, you cannot use cements that are using a solvent-based type material. It won't work. So you're going to have to use ACCs. What are those? Those are alpha cyanoacrylate cements, basically crazy glue or Zap-A-Gap. That bonds to the ABS plastic very, very well. But don't use any type of tube-type cements that you would use on a normal polystyrene model, because again, they won't stick and your model will fall apart. The skeleton of the model is composed of die-cast metal, also referred to as Zamac. That's an acronym for zinc, aluminum, metal, or something like that. Very, very tough stuff, and it is much stronger than the plastic, so that's why they made the skeleton out of that, to support the weight of the finished model. By the time you see this video, you'll probably be up to set 9 or 10 in your collection. And a number of people have asked, why do the color of the parts vary? When the model was originally designed, the plan was to actually pre-paint most of the parts and do a lot of the deco. And when you get the parts, you will see that there are some color applications done to the model at the factory. The problem is that from a practical standpoint, by the time you make thousands and thousands of these models and you paint and detail every part, it would add up to millions of man hours at the factory. It's just not practical to do that. You'd either have to wait 5 years for the model to come out, or every one would be $15,000. So we felt that a really good compromise would be to mold the color in as close to the filming miniatures color as possible, and then you can repaint from there. So because of the production and the way it's done, the panels do vary in color a little bit. I want to talk about that just so you understand what's happening there. At the production factories in China, injection molded parts like this actually start out as 50-gallon drums of what look like little plastic footballs. Now they come in myriad of different colors, but when you want to mix specific colors to a specification, that's where it starts to get a little more complicated. The engineers at the factory have to take different proportions of different base colors and mix them together to get it just right. Generally then they submit those as test shots to the owners of the project, in this case Agostini, to approve the colors. The trick here is that unlike a regular model kit, this project is being molded over a course of almost 2 years. So in that case, it's very difficult to maintain the colors over such a long period of time, because the base colors that come in themselves even vary a little bit. So while they have tried their best to maintain color uniformity between panels, the parts that you're going to get in set 5, for example, won't necessarily match the colors that you're going to get in set 53. It's just not practical to require that. So the factory does the best that they can, but there is going to be some variance in the colors. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the details of the model and get into some more specifics. I should mention right now that the model is 24 pounds, and in a future issue you will be getting a wall mount. There are also some landing gear pods that are going to be supplied in later issues of the kit. So if you wanted to display it on a tabletop, for example, you can just snap these in place and sit it on top. Me, since I don't have any space like that, I'm going to probably be using the wall mount to get it up off the table. The model details are very, very accurate. I've sat down and poured over the prototype, and I have about up to set 35 on the production parts now. And of course, being the anal guy that I am, I sat down and compared them to reference photos that I took back at the archive. And I gotta tell you, they got it about 99% accurate. Now, when I say 99% accurate, I want you to try to understand what a major accomplishment that is. Keep in mind, as geeks, we're worried about, oh, I hope they got the tank part right on the starboard mandible, you know, because that would be the end of the world if they got that wrong. Keep in mind, the guys that are working on this model and making them for us have never even seen Star Wars. You know, what the hell's an aluminum Falcon? So the fact that they're getting these parts absolutely accurate is just pretty amazing if you think about it. So Agostini and Model Space really have to stay on these guys to make sure that everything is done to the level of precision that we are expecting as fan geeks and collectors. I mean, even to the point where they've actually gone back and retooled some of the parts and done them over. And I'm just floored that they're doing that, because they didn't have to. It's a lot of money. But they really, really want to get this model as accurate as possible, and that's why I'm involved. I really appreciate the attention to detail that they're putting into this project. As I mentioned, because of the way this specific kit is constructed, it's substantially different than your typical styrene model kit that you get at, say, a hobby shop. Speaking of which, when I was in 7th grade, we would collect the Star Trek kits made by AMT. And if you remember back early in the video, we were talking about different colors that kits would come in. AMT was notorious for that. You would get kits in gray, blue, pink, purple. Well, one day Alex Mischuk walks in and he's got a black Klingon battlecruiser. Now, we all went crazy for this thing. We begged him to trade for it. I offered him a bunch of models. He wouldn't take them. And I have to say, after 40 years, I'm still bitter about that. Let's talk about paints. Now we're getting to the heart of the matter, and now that I'm done yammering on about all the other stuff, let's talk about how are we going to paint this model, right? So when I painted the first one a couple years ago, I mixed up a color base based on the paint codes that I had taken with the Pantone charts back at the archive. And this is pretty darn accurate. It was mixed, probably 4 or 5 different colors mixed together to get this. But then I realized, as I get older, keep it simple. And frankly, Tamiya makes these wonderful line of acrylic lacquer spray paints. This one in particular is called Insignia White. Now, Insignia White is not white. It's not white at all, by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm not sure why they call it Insignia White, but it's actually a light gray. And it has a yellowish cast to it, so it's perfect for the Falcon model. My recommendation is, rather than airbrushing this giant surface area, you go out and you buy these. Now, some people may say, I just prefer to airbrush my colors. There's a reason why I'm recommending the Tamiya, which I'll explain now. The great thing about the Tamiya line of acrylic lacquers is that once you spray them on the model and they cure for about a day or two, they're pretty impervious to most paint thinners. Now, they're not completely indestructible. If you scrub on them with a solvent-based thinner, you will get through it. But for a light rub here and there, it's pretty impervious. Why is that important to me, Steve? Good question, let me answer that. Because as you spray the cajillion details on this model, which we'll be going through in the later videos, and mainly you'll need an airbrush for that, by the way, double action. There's lots of colors and blast marks and scorches and all kinds of things, even paint spatter. If you spray with an enamel base and you mess up an area, you pretty much have to spray it out again and start from scratch. With this stuff, if you mess up an area or you're just not quite happy with it or you want to modify it, all you have to do is take a little bit of Model Master thinner, wipe off the airbrush paint, and start again. So you don't have to paint the base color again. So being extremely lazy as I am, I would rather go this route. And you're going to need probably 4 cans to do the entire model. That's my recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. 2 points that bear repeating, and they're fairly important. The base color that you apply to this model is going to be ultimately covered with another 8 to 10 layers of paint. So I really wouldn't agonize over the base color too much because you're just not going to see very much of it by the time the model is completely painted. The other point is that this model, as you see it in the video, was a pretty quickly done prototype to get it out on the street for publicity, and Agostini is aware that the paint job is rough and incomplete. It's missing a lot of the details that we're going to be talking about in the subsequent videos. So don't agonize over analyzing what it looks like right now. It's just a quickie piece. We're going to be completely rebuilding and repainting this over the next couple months, and you're going to see a huge difference. A number of customers have asked, where's my reference pictures? I'm on set 9, 10, 11, 12, and I got no reference pictures. How am I supposed to paint this thing? We've heard you. Agostini is going to be preparing a set of reference photos. We just haven't determined what the format's going to be yet, but they're getting to it. Now, you may notice that in the magazine there's quite a few images of the Falcon in there, but for the majority of them, they're the ones that I had done when I painted the model about 2 years ago. Now, admittedly, while it's amazingly accurate and it's just incredibly well done, you may not want to use those as direct reference. You may want to use the pictures of the original filming model. Don't worry about it. Don't agonize. It will be taken care of and you'll be swimming in reference, I promise you. As I mentioned, there's a few minor inaccuracies on the model. We're going to address 2 of them right now. And here is the primary offender. This little bugger right here. So here's the part we're talking about, and this is the problem. As it comes to you, the frame as you can see, are at the 12 and 6 o'clock positions. But on the filming miniature and the set, they're supposed to be like that. So what to do? Now, watch this again. Bad, good, bad, good. Okay, so you're saying to yourself, Steve, that's all well and dandy. We need to rotate this, but it comes glued. How am I supposed to fix that? I'm going to show you how to fix that. By the way, two other small points while we're talking about this. Later on, you're going to get this nifty interior included at no additional charge. And you're going to get clear plastic parts. I don't recommend using them because A, they just make it look like a toy, and B, the filming miniatures didn't really have clear plastic parts in them. So if you want to have it as authentic as you can, just leave it out because that's how it was in the movie. We have three simple tools here: a household hammer, a small screwdriver, and an X-Acto knife. Since you don't have this part yet, don't worry about it. Flip the piece over, and yes, it will be glued in position as you've received it. Just take an X-Acto knife, and actually you don't want a fresh one with a very, very sharp point on it because it would just slice into the plastic. If you have one that's worn down a little bit, it'll actually scrape through the plastic, which is what we want to do because we have to break the glue bond. So what you're going to do is take the back edge of the blade and just run it around inside this glue area, making a number of laps, and you're basically just scraping away some of the glue. You don't have to go all the way through. You just want to score it a bit. Then you take a small screwdriver, place it anywhere along the perimeter of the frame, and then just take a small hammer and tap very, very lightly. And as you do that, you'll hear a pop somewhere along this edge. It may not be in the first place you hit it, so check a few different places until you hear a real slight pop. And then just very lightly work your way around, tapping the screwdriver with the hammer again until you get it all the way around, and the frame will literally break loose. This whole operation shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, if that. As you can see here, I've already removed the locating tab. You'll have to do that, otherwise it won't sit back down in the new position. And I've also cleaned up all the glue on the perimeter with an X-Acto blade and some light sandpaper. That only took about a minute. Very simple to do. Here we've rebonded the frame in the new position. Just a few drops of glue around the perimeter, a little bit of set accelerator if you choose to do that, and it's done. Now, while we're on this part, here's a second little detail that's pretty close